Would you like to be somebody who understands whether evil stems simply from ignorance? Then listen to this entire video where I explain how in Buddhism, evil is thought to really just stem from not knowing any better, whereas in Christianity, evil is thought to be really an inherent part or potential within humans, and which one of these is more accurate? Let's figure it out. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. Okay, so evil I would define as the desire to inflict pain upon another being for the sake of inflicting pain. So it's the conscious actually desire to inflict the pain. And it's not just, it's almost like a profound darkness. It's not just, you know, I wanna hurt someone, but it's like a deep, profound desire and a strong will to create hell on earth in some sense. Okay, so Buddhism really sort of is founded upon the idea that evil stems from ignorance, from simply not knowing any better. Because enlightenment is the ultimate goal in Buddhism. And in enlightenment, when you're enlightened, you are in a stage of life where, a hypothetical stage of life, where you see the truth for what it really is. You see the universe for what it really is with 100% accuracy. And of course, getting to that point, you need to see more and more of the truth. And ignorance is basically the opposite of enlightenment. It is where you don't see what the truth really is. And that is sort of a precursor to enlightenment. It's almost like the inherent stage of life, or let's say the default stage of life is ignorance, one could say. Yeah. So, but what this implies, if you say, well, evil stems from ignorance, you kind of imply that there is a process which you can undertake, which overcomes that ignorance and then no longer makes you evil. And, by some process of learning to see more about the truth. But I disagree with that. I think that's not quite correct. So, there isn't a trait. Like, it sort of believes that there is not really a trait of human nature, like an inherent part which will always be there, that's sort of the source of evil, but more of like the default version, but you can move away from it, and maybe, the potential for evil decreases as you move further away from it. It doesn't like stay with you at all times. And I think I don't quite think that's correct. I'm not quite sure if that's correct, because I think the potential for evil remains there across time, no matter how much more of the truth you see. Now, Christianity believes evil is more of how I understood it, more of an inherent attribute of human nature. It has its, evil has its own representation of, Lucifer or Satan, the devil. Whereas in Buddhism, I'm not quite sure if there is a representation of it. It's more of actually just simply something that lies within humans and is not really abstracted out onto an external, I don't want to say deity, but an external representative. So, with God and Lucifer, you need to understand that, I don't know the story of Lucifer off by heart, but it's something along the lines of Lucifer was an archangel, so an angel very high up in the hierarchy of angels, and he eventually became arrogant and proud and thought he was beyond the subordination to God. So he no longer wanted to be subordinated to God. He thought he was better than that. And his defiance towards God, his betrayal to God, ended up with him being thrown into, cast out of heaven and down into hell, essentially. So there's these two very important traits here, pride and arrogance. So, and this is where pride and arrogance, they are the source of evil, I think, in Christianity. It's when you become too proud and too arrogant, you start to lose humility and you think you are beyond people, you become supercilious, and you think you are able to judge what is right and what is wrong, and able to make decisions for other people. And I think that is also where, genocides come into play, because people think that they have they possess the right to hurt other people because they think it is justified, something like that. That's pride and arrogance, especially arrogance, I would say. Now, this is where we get to the crux of the matter. Buddhism says ignorance causes evil. Christianity more says pride and arrogance cause evil. But does pride and arrogance stem from ignorance then? Because that would explain it then. From the Buddhist perspective, well, pride and arrogance might be simply ignorance. So, on the one hand, yes, because maybe the pride and arrogant individuals don't know better. Their pride and arrogance might stem from ignorance. But on the other hand, are we so sure about that? I think some reprehensible individuals, or individuals with reprehensible behavior, let's say, who act out evil, do it consciously. Buddhism implies that the perpetrators don't grasp what they're doing, but I'm not so sure about that. I think people are not ignorant when they act out evil. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. Some perpetrators are utterly convinced that abomination is viable for them to act out, and it's this resentment. Life can be quite difficult, and I think for a lot of nihilistic people, when they see that there's no point in living, or there isn't really any potential for reward for them to get out of life, but they're still subjected to the difficulties of life, this uphill task, then they think, well, this game kind of sucks. Like, why would I want to play this? And they start to become resentful and try to, take revenge on being itself, on this game called life. And that's a very conscious thing. That's just, they're nihilistic. And in some sense, maybe that is also ignorance, because they don't understand that there is meaning in life. There is potential meaning to be found. So the thing I find impalpable about the argument that evil stems from ignorance is that it implies one's ability to transcend resentment lies beyond one's consciousness, because you're ignorant, like you're not really able to transcend it, maybe, but it's like you kind of have no free will. I disagree with that to a degree, because I do think there is a voice within your soul that stipulates moral behavior. And I know this voice can actually stifle by acting out evil and bad behavior. There's an idea in Christianity that the more you act out evil, the greater the distance you set between you and God. You sort of depart from what might be ethical or God. So that might be, then you might become more ignorant, because this voice is drowned out, maybe. But it's still there, I think, because it's always there. It cannot be eradicated. That cannot be eradicated. And the evil behavior then it truncates the voice of God within you, something like that. But people are conscious of what evil is to a degree, or maybe they don't know it, but they feel it, like they sense it. It's not just about knowing the ignorance, but it's also about feeling it. Like you can probably feel if you're acting out bad things. Now, so Buddhism explains it as a process. There's a process by which you can outgrow ignorance, but so many people don't outgrow it. Evil is more conscious than ignorant, I think. But maybe Buddhism is also referring to that, like, This is a really tricky one, actually. Well, the reason why I'm not too fond, or why I might question the idea that evil stems from ignorance, is because it kind of devalues the human potential for evil. Because it kind of makes it the potential for evil seem less pernicious, or less. No, pernicious isn't the right word. Less reprehensible, or less. it makes people feel less responsible, I think, because they think, oh, but I'm human, I'm ignorant. But it's more of actually like, no, the evil is part of you and you are responsible for restraining it. I would say I think it's conceptually more optimal to say that evil is a part of you, or you have the potential for it, and you need to take control of it, rather than it stems from your ignorance. Because the ignorance is kind of it's kind of an excuse for you to maybe act out bad behavior, I would say. Yeah. So in conclusion, the question of whether evil stems from ignorance or actually just it's part of human nature, that's a very difficult one, because on the one hand, if people knew better, then they might be able to transcend the pain that makes them hurt other people, want to hurt other people, like these people who are nihilistic and resent life itself. They might you could try and convince them and teach them that there is meaning to be found, and there are awesome things in life, and then they won't act out the evil behavior. But then on the other hand, or maybe that is it. But is that ignorance then? It's a very difficult, it really boils down to whether the overcoming evil lies in your hands or whether it's not, because the ignorance kind of says it does lie in your hand, and the Christianity, well, also in some sense. This is a really confusing one, actually. Because the variable that influences whether you act out the evil or not is not obvious, because some people are able to transcend their pain and others aren't, and it's not clear what that mediating variable is. That's a really tricky one. That's essentially the most fundamental question, is how do you reduce evil? It's a very tricky, complex question, and I don't know the answer to it, unfortunately. Anyway, so please leave a comment below whether you think Buddhism explains evil more accurately, with that it stems from ignorance, or whether you think Christianity explains it more accurately, that it's really part of human nature, and it is, you have God within you and you have Satan within you at the same time, and you have these two poles that are unified within the human and that are present always within the human. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.